Welcome to everyone here today. I always think that it's going to be easier whenever I come out to the grounds, and it's not. It doesn't get easier. My mother attended here, and she was a survivor. I am here to introduce you to a group of people that I worked with recently from the Detroit American Indian Services Incorporated. If you could all please come forward and take a seat on the stage. We want to introduce you and let everyone see who is here today. A long time ago, this group had a dream that they thought the testimony of what has happened in the lives of those that were dear to them at the time, it should be told. And it continued to widen and broaden like ripples in a lake. And it ended at that point to move on, but it ended at that point in the making of a documentary. It's a powerful documentary. It's not a movie. It's not make-believe. It's testimonies of people who were survivors and endurers of boarding schools. It's called Indian Schools, A Survivor's Story. During the late 19th and 20th centuries across the United States and Canada, the federal government habitually required Native American children to residential boarding schools. Beginning with the Carlisle Indian School in Pennsylvania, that was 1879. The goal was assimilation. The motto was kill the Indian to save the man. There were 519 schools in the United States and 126 schools in Canada. Indian boarding schools routinely subjected children, sometimes as young as 4 years old, to emotional and spiritual abuse, corporal punishment, and worse. The students' alienation from their families resulted in a loss of culture, language, ritual, and a loss of their spirituality, which in turn led to intergenerational trauma and thus began the post-traumatic stress in many Native families today. The film that you're going to be able to see this afternoon is from the victims' own voices, and it details the boarding school experience. It's a powerful movie, and I trust that you will take what you see there and with wisdom and love in your heart, that you will take it and use it to the best of your ability to become a better person and make lives around you better for what you know. No, education is the key. Now, I have some people here that I would like to introduce. These people that you see in front of you are in the documentary. We lost one of our people that is in the documentary. He has walked on, and you will see him in the film. After we get done here, we're going to make some comments. Hunter Jean is going to come from behavioral health, and he's going to make a few comments. And then the documentary will be shown just before lunch. So introduce yourself and tell me something about why you want to do the documentary.
Vidasagena Digitas. Jesus Christ and down is 101 an hour. Makom Dormo. Wagnak sing the Dojaba. Wagnak sing Odawa Kika. Simogadis. I speak to all my relatives here in Mount Pleasant on the Saginaw Chippewas. My great-grandmother, my great-grandfather walked on, and my great-grandmother remarried a man named David Chingwashe. And Jim and Lucy Smith and Carol Bennett and Wilmer Smith and Owen Smith, all my relatives. And so I remember coming here in the early 50s and playing softball on the hill and having a good feast. And then my father brought me over here and we just drove by this place. And he didn't say anything more but that this was an Indian school. And later in my life, dealing with my own residual issues and trying to fight the demons that were in me, I began to research what all this was. And I have pictures here from Carlisle Industrial School that my grandfather graduated from. His graduating class and my grandmother. And I found out about Carlisle. And I probably have 20,000 to 30,000 hours of research because I wanted to know and then I wanted to share it with our family. And I sat here today looking at these big trees here, and I think sometimes because we're all connected to this life and life-giving things, if this ground isn't a recording device of all that took place here, that none of our people that experienced these things and walked on have left anonymously. Maybe there are those that hope that they have, but the record is still here. I was asked to testify in Arlington, Virginia in a congressional listening session. When it came my turn, I held up a copy of the 1855 treaty, and I said, I have a document here that I believe is still legal. And I said, we don't want to hear about you cutting our budgets or taking away from your responsibilities that are defined in this treaty. And the moderator said, indignantly, he said, you need to understand we're so many $1 trillion in debt. And I said, I can't help it if you're not fiscally responsible if I don't make my car payments. They come and take my car. And I said, if you can't keep up your responsibilities, give us the land back. There were 100 tribes represented, and they came out into the foyer, and they said, Warren, you got to watch your mouth. Said, somebody's going to shoot you. And I said, if they do, I'll be with the ancestors, and that'll be okay. Then they wanted to take a tour of the memorials and the Vietnam Wall and the Smithsonian. And I got up the next morning to go down to get on the tour bus, and the creator said, don't go. I said, okay. I got my pajamas back on and watched the news and fixed the room coffee. And then I remembered there was a Starbucks in the front room downstairs, and I wanted a Starbucks coffee. It was a Crystal Gateway Hotel, and I'd never been in a place like that. And I went to the foyer and drank my coffee, and pretty soon the tour buses come back, and the Navajo women and Arikara people, different tribes came and sat down, and they said, Warren, we didn't see you on the tour bus. I said, no. I got up to go, but the creator said, don't go. They said, well, why would he say that? And I said, I was sitting here thinking of that. And the picture, the image of the Smithsonian came up. And I remembered there's 12,000 remains of our ancestors still in boxes in the basement of the Smithsonian. And the scripture came to me, outwardly you're like whited sepulchres, inwardly you're full of dead men's bones. The dead bones of our ancestors that they haven't returned to us for interment and ceremony. And so I want to keep things into context. My wife and I just finished a 12,000-mile journey across the United States of the reservations, distributing this video and trying to bring a greater consciousness and connection between all of us people of the red race. We belong to each other, and we stand on the shoulders of our grandmothers and grandfathers and our ancestors. And we have a responsibility to them and to that generation that's coming, and the way we live our life and who we are. And I don't carry that responsibility lightly. I'm glad for the Ogima from Lockview to Sayre remembering that I had come there. And I have a great deal of respect for him and the Creator's role in his life, because he is the youngest chairman in Michigan that I know of. But I know they got a man with a good heart, and he has the right intentions and directions for his people, and we need that. We need people in our tribal governments that are conscious of these conditions and situations so that we continue this healing work. And I know I'm going on and on here, and there's plenty here to say. Chimigwets for having us here today, for the great hospitality and the good food, but most of all, that I can sit with you for a while on our land and share these things and smile at you and have you smile at me, and we recognize each other as relatives. Chimigwets.
My name is Faye Givens. I'm the Executive Director of American Indian Services in Lincoln Park, Michigan, just south of Detroit. We serve the at-large members from any tribe that lives in the Detroit area. And I want to say thank you, Yokoki, to Shannon Martin and Zeba Wing for this wonderful invitation. This movie came about as a result of a talking circle that we do in our center in Detroit, and everyone that's in the movie has been part of the talking circle. And this started about 5 years ago, and the more I heard, the more I knew, I thought we have got to start recording our own history. We have to start telling this story, not only to all of us, we know the story. We're all survivors of this intergenerational boarding school experience. But we need to get this out to the entire world and tell this story. So we raised a little money and we did the film. And I can tell you it was one of the most emotionally draining things I've ever done in my life, because I love all the people in this film. And I heard the stories, and when the first time we came to this site, we were all standing here and we started talking honestly about our own lives, and we realized that every one of us had family at Carlisle Indian School, probably there together. So that was something. Here we were many, many years later, the descendants of the people from Carlisle here together, ready to tell the story of our families. So I appreciate this opportunity, and I appreciate all of you coming to see the film. Thank you so much. I'm a Mississippi Choctaw. Choctaws got to the Carlisle Indian School too. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Roxana Jones. My maiden name is Blackbird. I'm from Wapoo Island, Ontario. I went to 2 residential schools, one in Sault Ste. Marie or Shingwauk, and one Mohawk in Brantford, which we call the Mush Hole, because that's what you got every morning. Cold. And I spent about 13 years in these 2 places. When I eventually got out, it didn't take me long to get in trouble. And I wasn't worried. I went right back to see my Indian agent to see what she could do for me. She said I had 3 choices. Because I was pregnant, they could put me in an unwed mother's home, or they could send me back to the reserve, which I haven't grown up on. And her third option was women's prison. And she said, or it was up to her, she'd send me to the prison. Because because I was institutionalized. I'd adapt so easily. Anyway, I went back to the reserve. And I wasn't there long. I gave birth, took my child, and came to Detroit. I've been since '64. And I've been working in the American Indian Services for over 20 years. And as you can tell, I still get over the trouble. We've listened to prayers today. The two schools I was in were run by Anglicans. But dear God, sometimes they're really shoggosh. Anyway, maybe I'll get over it. I said to myself I wouldn't cry. Because when I was in the schools, we were taught that Indians don't cry. But since I went for therapy, I cry all the time. Thank you.
My name is Edith Young. I'm Chair of Kalapachi, Chachi Raparoka. I'm the Executive Director of the American Indian Center in Cleveland, Ohio. I've been working there for 43 years. And I'm a survivor. That's why I'm here, for the healing, and to make sure that everybody knows what happened, the atrocities that are committed here, and other institutions. Thank you.
Alito Hatak Chalam Polili. My name is Dr. Kay McGowan, and I'm a Mississippi Choctaw. And if you think you're seeing double with Faye and I, you are. We're identical twins. Double trouble, our father called us double trouble. He was right. I teach Native Studies at Eastern Michigan University, and I'm kind of like Roxana. Every semester I say, this semester I'm going to tell the stories and I'm not going to cry. Well, by the second week I'm crying. And I cry every week, and I've been crying, telling the stories for 24 years to my students. And my heart is never hardened. And we recognize the importance of telling this story about the boarding schools, because in order to prevent this from ever happening again, people have to know what happened to Native people. And one of the things that people don't realize, you know, the United States started the boarding school period. This was their failed experiment. The Canadian government thought that was a good idea. They picked up and did it too. Australia then said, okay, this is what we can do. This is how we can get rid of our indigenous people, our aborigines. We can force them to assimilate like they're doing in the United States. New Zealand then followed suit. The Maori sent their indigenous Maori people, the government of New Zealand sent the indigenous Maori to the boarding schools. Even the Russians, they have indigenous people that are called the Sami. They live in the northernmost part of the world. They sent their indigenous Sami to boarding schools. So this ill-fated boarding school period spread across the world. Last year I saw the Maasai that were at the United Nations from Tanzania, and they said, oh, our government is talking about taking our children and putting them in free education. I said, no, don't let them do it. And so we began the process of educating people around the world what's being done in the boarding schools. So we did this movie, and the movie has had tremendous response, and so many people said to me when we were working on the movie, had lots of people that said, oh, that didn't happen. And I said, it did happen. It did happen, and America's eyes were closed, and they allowed it to happen. So one of the things I want, yes, healing is good, but I want accountability. I want to know who gave the orders, who murdered the children, who murdered the pregnant girls. I want to know where they're buried. I want the United States government to pay for the teaching of indigenous languages to Native people, to including Native people in the curriculum in schools across America, not just colleges, but K through 12. I want excavation, and I want the United States government to pay for it. I want to know how many children died. You know, there were over 500 schools in this country. There wasn't a single tribe that wasn't affected by the boarding schools. It wasn't just Michigan. Our grandparents met at the Choctaw Academy in Kentucky. Our grandfather's family, one family came from North Carolina, and our family came from Mississippi. This was across the country, folks. And it was another failed United States government, another failed policy, one of many, many failed policies. So thank you so much for inviting us to show our movie and to being here and sharing this with us today. Yokoki, thank you.
I'm Edith Young. I'm Tlingit Tsimshian of Alaska. Both of my parents divorced when I was only 2 years old. So there was quite a bit of family problems. So the social workers took me away from home, put me in this so-called school. I call it a prison. I was in the 3rd grade when they took me away, and like the lady a little earlier described, different actions that were being done to even one another in the schools, nasty things. But the nuns were the most vicious, the most prejudiced against us Indians especially. And we had to do basically what she said. We had to do gardening like we were farmers, only in the 3rd and 4th grade on up. We had to she said she had to kneel on rice. I had to kneel on dried brown beans for an hour. Just because if something didn't look clean enough for them, and we were the best keepers of that whole school building. They would pull our hair, a little bit of hair that we were allowed to keep. That's why to this day I'm going to let my hair grow till I pass on, if it's down to my ankles, because there's no way in the world. I'm 81 years old, and I'm still going to keep on talking for the rights of us Indians in schools, period. There's still a lot of that going on, but in the boarding school, I had to be in charge of a four room because I made myself say I'm not going to let them just hit me, pull my hair, call me a wild, savage Indian and let the other kids in school go, oh, oh, oh. And that was hurting. Who's more savage than the people who came here to the country? I don't care who doesn't like hearing it. I'm telling it out. That the wars came to this country from around the world. And so it taught the children of boarding schools the same way. All we were told to read was about the savage Indians, so the kids would snicker at me and go like that. They didn't make the sound, but they did it on purpose. And so after my 6th year of high school, I would go into the bathroom after dark, after we were told to go to bed, and I was supposed to be minding the other 3 girls. I was like the monitor, and but I was really depressed back then, and many a night I went into our bathroom, and it's cold in Seattle. That's where I was raised, rainy and all, and so there were times that I just opened up my nightgown like this, and I said, please let me die. I had pneumonia so many times. I just wanted to die now of all this hatred. And, but I ended up coming out very strong mother, wife, and not two-faced to people. And I've tried to do the best that I can. And yes, it's been a secret for a few hundred years about the Catholic Church, the nuns, how mean they were, beating us with rulers that had copper, and but to pull you aside, you didn't look right, and they'd say, go kneel on the beans, and I had to do that because they would slap me across the face, pull my hair, and all. So even at 81, it hurts very much to realize that I was hated so much. But anyway, thanks for listening, and try to understand what predicament that we Indians had to go through. And by the way, I'm gonna be through. Let's stop having Columbus Day and have, why not close the banks and whatever on that day? Close that day. What did he do for our country? Thank you all for listening. I'd like one more comment.
Who am I to say no?
I told you about having to kneel on brown beans, kidney beans. Can you hear me? Yeah. So many times that to this very day, my knees are like Brillo pads. The color is not my normal color, of my skin because of the kneeling of beans for punishment, 1 hour at a time.